Welcome to today's episode, the podcast where we discuss the most recent installments of a different series every show. Kaos is a new comedy drama on Netflix created by Charlie Covell and starring Jeff Goldblum as Zeus, King of the Gods. The first thing on the agenda is to discuss our expectations going into the series and then run down the plot of the 50-minute pilot.
Charlie Covell is also the person that worked on The End of the Fucking World. She wrote all the episodes for the first 2 seasons, and that show is very, existential.
Yeah, I also remember that the second season wasn't as good as the first, right?
Yeah, I think the second season was more there just to finish off the series because they weren't going to make another one after that. But I was excited to see what she was going to do with this because she's always liked Greek mythology ever since she was a kid.
Of her creative mind is in this show? Is it all her? Or is there any sort of source material that she bases?
She wrote most of the episodes. I think she wrote 7 of the 8 episodes that there's going to be.
I mean, obviously, she took well-known Greek mythology and tried to adapt it into a contemporary piece of art.
And that's why it reminded me so much of Has-Been Hotel or something like that. When you bring in the gods or some type of thing in a cartoony world, Percy Jackson.
Sure. The only thing I knew going into the series was that it starred Jeff Goldblum, which... A little Goldblum goes a long way. He played the Grandmaster in Ragnarok, where he was the same character. Apartments.com, he's got that kind of affable, but at the same time, very snarky, self-centered opinion of himself. He's kind of like Steve Buscemi in Miracle Workers Season 1, the God guy, right?
Originally, it wasn't supposed to be him. They had Hugh Grant. He was supposed to be the person who played Zeus, but because of scheduling conflicts, he wasn't able to do it.
He pulled it off.
They got Jeff Goldblum, and then Jeff Goldblum even said that he described Zeus, the version he's playing, as horrible, almost like a Hollywood star, but one who doesn't get the big parts anymore.
Okay, so he's like Sunset Boulevard.
One thing,
the sun is setting on him.
One article that caught my attention was it said Succession meets ancient Greece when talking about this show, and I was wondering, is that true? Is that what you would describe?
I'll get to my comparisons. I have a lot of comparisons, but what drew you to this? Because you were the ones who brought it to my attention. So, what other than the Goldblum and the End of the Fucking World creator brought you to this?
I don't know how many people you've seen in the series yet, but there are some very famous names attached to it.
So it was just the cast.
Yes.
Because it's got a big cast. It's got a long credits list at the very end. It was almost like a movie credits. And the amount of music in this thing, they just pulled in every song that they could get. I think I printed off the list here. So you have ABBA and you have Dire Straits. You have Paul Simon, you have Blue Oyster Cult. They didn't spare the budget for the music.
It reminds me of The Summer I Turned Pretty, but what you're describing is more like kind of the 90s classic rock.
It was the needle drops. They just happened after 30 seconds, they were done. So they gave you a little preview of the music. The only song that went the whole way, I think, was the original song made for the show, which the rock star sings about 75% with.
Oh, he actually sings the.
Orpheus.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, so like most series that incorporate gods, this introduces us to a world that is like Earth. It's called Earth, but it's different, right? So there's this global theocracy, which has been around, I assume, since Greek civilization, but it never went away. So near everybody worships the Olympian Greek gods, the originals, Zeus and Hera. And this monism has controlled the entire world for so long that we don't have countries the way that, there is no the U.S., there is no Britain. I was trying to gauge if they were in Florida at first because of all the palm trees, but I think it's just everywhere is Crete.
So is this in the future that we're taking place, or is it just supposed to be an alternative world?
It's an alternative world. It's an alternative universe. Everyone is named after a god. So Orpheus, Kali, Eurydice, Eurydice. How do you say her name? Anyways, she goes by Riddy, right? So they have nicknames at least. And then everybody gets a prophecy, or at least Riddy has a prophecy, and she's our main character. And so day-to-day life seems unaffected. There's grocery stores and cars, phones, clubs. People have normal jobs, cigarettes. There's street vendors. The food is the same. The only things that are different basically surround the religious aspect of it, and the fact that they have this palace where they do, there was a mural that was set up to be some form of connection with the gods that was then desecrated in the middle of the episode, which pissed Zeus off royally. They do have some questionable safety measures because you can buy guns off the street, off street vendors. They just have shops there where you don't even need to give any background ID.
So just
And
out in the
also,
middle of the street, they're selling guns?
yes, and that comes into play later on. But there's also like grocery store security guards. If you've ever worked at a grocery store or any store that sells clothing or anything like that, usually the policy is when someone steals something, you just let them go.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, because you don't want to get into that mess. Even the security guard, they mark it down.
You file like a
they call
police
the
report.
police.
Yeah.
But here, they put the lady in a headlock in the first scene. I've never seen that before. And she was just stealing cat food. So this is the beginning of Riddy's story. She's going about her day, and she goes to the store. She's picking up cereal for her husband.
Well, it's
and
important.
Then you have homeless Billie Piper,
yes,
who I haven't seen since Doctor Who. And Riddy turns around to this homeless lady, and she immediately starts espousing like all this drama of like what to expect. The end is nigh, and that she's going to dump her boyfriend or her husband by the end of the day, finally leave him.
Is she like the chosen one? Is that what Billie Piper is trying to say, or is she just saying?
No,
the end
I mean,
is
she
nice?
just comes across as a crazy lady because she's got like smeared makeup and she looks like she's just been through a mess.
I know.
And so
one.
then,
Yeah.
When she goes outside, when Riddy goes outside, and this homeless lady is being accosted by the security guard for stealing cat food, that's when Riddy's like, "I'll pay for the cat food." And then the homeless lady reiterates, "This is the day that you leave your husband." And that kind of shocks Riddy enough where when she goes home to her rock star husband named Orpheus, and he literally is a rock star. He's playing the guitar, and he has a concert that night at the palace where the mural was being set up, I think.
Well, I wanted to jump in really fast because you were talking about Riddy. One thing that's very important is that while she's at the store and she's looking at the cereal behind her, and I think she even purchases it when she's leaving the store, she's looking at, or there's pomegranate juice. And pomegranate juice is obviously kind of almost a symbolism for death in Greece mythology.
Yeah. Well, I think it's Persephone, right? Who like makes the deal where she's trying not to eat when she's captured by Hades, and then she ends up eating 6 pomegranate seeds and having to spend 6 months of the year there from then on out. Well, this story connects to a different, I would think, Greek mythological tale, but I'll get into that in a few minutes. So Riddy heads home. She's meeting her husband. Her husband loves her, like almost to the point where it just makes her uncomfortable because she doesn't like herself. She feels like her mom had betrayed her many, many years ago. She had joined the nunhood, or whatever they want to call the people who serve directly for the gods. They cut out their tongues, and they serve in the temples where people go and tell them confessions. And then up in Olympus, Hera actually has all the tongues in a big library, and she listens to those confessions. It's one of the weirdest scenes, but also very funny. And Riddy, she's not feeling good about it. And Orpheus just can't tell. They end up hooking up, but at the same time, Riddy's still like she's going to dump him at some point. And it's sad because he hasn't done anything wrong, but you also understand where she's coming from, because humans are ultimately fickle, and sometimes relationships just lose steam. And the person who's telling us her thoughts isn't actually her. It's Prometheus, who's another god who's just being tortured while Zeus is up there kind of living his life out in the heaven of Olympus.
And I could be wrong, but do they ever show Prometheus?
Yeah, so Prometheus, he's having his liver gnawed at by a bird the entire time until Zeus zaps him into Olympus just to talk to him for a split second about the prophecy. He's kind of there to just be the snarky narrator, to give us that connection. One of my favorite parts is when we pass a character and he freeze frames on it and he says, "She's Ari. We'll come back to her later. She's very important." And then we continue with the show.
That's exactly like City of God with Knockout Ned.
Yeah, we never come back to her because it's not in this episode, at least. So I want to stick to Riddy's storyline for now.
Yeah.
She promises to go to Orpheus's concert that night. He heads off with Callie, his assistant, and he's recognized by a lot of his fans. He makes his way to the palace. He's dedicated a song to Riddy. He starts singing it. It's amazing. At the same time, Riddy goes directly to the temple of Hera to approach her mom and says, "Not only have you ruined my life, but now I'm going to dump my husband because of you. I blame the gods for this. I'm feeling tortured. I don't like my life." And then the mom can only write down, because she doesn't have a tongue, the prophecy again, which just says that there's going to be a line, and then the gods will fall and chaos will reign. roll credits.
So there's, but you're saying there's two prophecies. It sounds like you're saying one is Billie Piper's, where she's like the end is nigh.
Well,
but it
Billie
seems
Piper's was less of a prophecy and more of like those crazy people who stand outside schools and yell like the apocalypse is coming, you know,
Right.
that type of thing. But she was direct enough to say, you are going to leave your husband today. You've always been wondering when it's going to be. It's today. And so as you're watching it, you're expecting a breakup story. And that's what they're leading you up to. But as Riddy exits the temple, still mad, she runs across Billie Piper's character again, the homeless lady. And she gets distracted enough where then she's hit by a bus and she dies immediately. And then you find out that Orpheus finds out at his concert and he stops the concert, and we jump to the funeral. And then we jump to him just going into a deep depression.
Oh, so she's dead. Like...
She is dead. And he's even at the funeral, and they're doing this tribute where they have a coin and they're saying, Hades, please let this coin represent the fare that she needs to take for the passage into the netherworld or whatever. And so he buys a gun off one of those street vendors, and he's about to shoot himself in the head. But that's when we really follow Dionysus. That's the son of Zeus, who's kind of like the club guy. He's the god, I think they said, of like a partying or something like that.
He reminded me of Nathan from Misfits, but also his character in the Umbrella Academy, just kind of the party dude.
He happened to catch the song that Orpheus had dedicated to his girlfriend on the night of, and he's been following what's happened to Orpheus since. And so he shows up at the beach where Orpheus is about to shoot himself. Orpheus accidentally shoots him because he's so surprised. And then obviously, since he's a god, Dionysus can't die. And I think this is a surprise to Orpheus. I don't think the gods tell people on Earth normally that there are gods on Earth. I think they just go about their days doing their things. Right. And so he says, I have my purpose now. My purpose is to help you, Orpheus, find your girlfriend without you having to kill yourself.
Wait, so let me get this. Orpheus accidentally shoots Dionysus. I assume Dionysus knows it was a mistake.
There to help him.
Yeah, but I assume he knows that it was a mistake when he shot him.
Yeah, he gets up and he's like, why the hell did you do that? That hurts. That stings, you know? But then he forgives him, and they're off on their adventure. The funny thing is Orpheus never knew that that his girlfriend, or his wife, had fallen out of love with him. So it's already a tragic tale. And then that's all like the I think the more grounded story.
Well, I wanted to talk it really fast because you were talking about the bus that hits her, and you only see it for a couple frames, but the bus that hits her is called Serpent Solutions. That's because in the original myth, her character is bitten by a snake.
Oh, yeah. So there's a lot of little connections, and this Earth is made up. Even the cereal boxes were a lot of connections with the gods, and everybody's name is, like I said, a nickname of a god.
So just to be clear, the gods, they're not, you don't, like, it's not like the boys where you can see them down on Earth, right? People just believe them.
Point. Yeah, they're above usually interacting with the normal populace. They just like to have their own little like orgies in the sky,
right?
Or incestuous orgies, as Zeus liked to say. So Zeus Goldblum is up there, and he's feeling antsy himself because there's this water circle, which is supposed to represent strength of his empire or his like family, and it has a little blip that he's noticed. It's called Meander. That's the name of the water circle. He's also saw the television production where they had the palace unveiling of this monument that was supposed to be for him, and these guys named the Trojans, the heretics of the world. They don't believe in any other religion. They just don't like the gods. They're like, fuck the gods. They have destroyed this thing, and that angers Zeus, and Hera has to be the one to calm him down a little bit. On top of that, his bastard son, because Dionysus, even though he's a god, that's only because Zeus was nice to him. He's actually just a half god, kind of like in Percy Jackson.
Yeah, like a demigod.
Yes, but he's been granted full godship. Like, he's been given the full power set, but his mom was turned into a bee by Hera because she was so jealous.
Oh, is that why the cereal had the bee on it?
Probably.
Yeah.
Zeus is a slut. Like, that is a known fact in all Greek mythology, is that guy would sleep around, he'd have kids with everybody, and Hera was a little bit jealous of that, and so she doesn't like Dionysus that much. Dionysus wants to impress his father, but all he can do is keep screwing up himself. He tries to give him a watch on a recommendation by a street vendor who says, time is valuable or something like that.
Yeah, this was like the first scene that we get between them, right?
The problem is Zeus already has a watch from Achilles, and so he ends up taking that one off, and that's when Dionysus steals that other watch, which I think is one of the things that pushes the prophecy forward. And so all this stuff is kind of making Zeus feel antsy and like something's wrong, and he has the prophecy that says the thing, you'll see a line, and then the house will fall, and then chaos will reign, right?
Yeah.
And so he sees a wrinkle that he has not seen before, which is funny because he's a 71-year-old man in real life and he has a lot of wrinkles. But this is one particular wrinkle that he hasn't seen before. And so he talks to Hera about it, and then he beams Prometheus there for a split second to talk to him about it because he's kind of his friend. He's being punished because he gave, I think, the people of Earth fire at one point. That was the whole reason that he's been cast aside by the other gods.
So that's because man created fire.
Because Prometheus gave man fire. That's what
that was like. Okay, yeah, thousands of years.
So yeah, he's been on that rock face for a very long time, but every once in a while Zeus will have an interchange with him, and Prometheus lies to him. He's like, you got nothing to worry about it. You're God. You're the best of the gods, you know?
Did you recognize who Prometheus was?
No, but he sounded like Anthony Hopkins at first.
Stannis from Game of Thrones, also Alex Rider.
I never would have gotten that. And so it ends though with several reveals. One is that Zeus is screwed, like the end is coming for him and his family. The other is that he used to be human because only humans can get prophecies, and he has a prophecy. The other is that Riddy is like there, but she's on a boat. Like they show her on like this Ellis Island type ferry in black and white. Reminded me of Preacher, if anybody knows that season.
So she's still alive is basically what they were.
She's in the afterlife. She's literally on her way to wherever Hades is hanging out, you know. And they share the same prophecy. That's the last thing, is that usually prophecies are independent. But that's not necessarily the case because Riddy and Zeus have the same one. They just don't know that. And that's where we leave. That's the entire episode. There's a lot in there. There's a lot in that 50 minutes.
Well, the first thing I wanted to ask was, or actually tell you, was that was Orpheus your favorite character?
I wouldn't say I had a favorite quite yet, but I did like his singing scene. I thought that elevated the show significantly.
I haven't seen the series, but the fact I have on him I actually like the most is that the person who played him, their actual name was Cillian Murphy, spelled exactly the same as the actor, but he changed his name to Cillian, different spelling of his first name, and then also now his name is Cillian Scott as Orpheus. Also, the main character, Riddy, is the daughter of Michael from Lost. So so you can see that they have a lot of talent for the show, as you were kind of talking
and From
about.
is just about to come out again.
Yeah.
He stars in From. That's cool. Do you want to hear my comparisons?
Yes, please.
Because I have a ton of comparisons. First, I want to say what this show most reminds me of, creatively wise, tone wise, vibe wise, is Mrs. Davis.
Mrs. Davis, I guess. Yes. Yeah, right.
Damon Lindelof's Peacock show from I think a year or two back.
I think it was on your best subs list.
Yeah, because it is like a pseudo Earth that it has. Instead of there being gods, there's an AI that is taken over, and so everybody's sort of serving that. But the main character is a disillusioned girl because her parent abandoned her, and she blames the entity in charge. In the case of Mrs. Davis, again, it was the AI, but in this, it's the gods, right? So a very similar premise. And as far as just like I was saying, the tone of it, everyone has their own adventure. It feels like it's open to like whatever could happen.
This is a lot less action packed though, right? It didn't sound like there was a lot of action from what happened in the series.
A girl dies getting hit by a bus. That's pretty actiony. You see a full out concert. There's a mural destruction. Zeus is throwing out lightning. There's some action there. Mythologically speaking, there's also been a lot of those type of shows. You can compare this to Good Omens, The Sandman, any Neil Gaiman thing, American Gods, Crapopolis. How are gods normally represented? They're usually represented, I'm asking you.
Well, as of now, usually they're supposed to be kind of bumbling fools, kind of like the Crapopolis that you're talking about.
They have an attitude. I usually find them like assholes. They usually are shown as rude, sadistic, cheeky, fallible for sure.
Especially the most powerful ones like Zeus, and I assume Jeff Goldblum is.
And that brings me to my main comparison, if you're looking for a mythological comparison, is Percy Jackson and the Olympians.
Right.
Because you have Zeus's son in this stealing not a lightning bolt, but a watch. And then through context, that's supposed to lead me to believe that this prophecy is going to happen. In Percy Jackson and the Olympians, someone's stolen the lightning bolt, right?
Yeah.
We actually see Zeus. I think he's played by Lance Reddick, right? So he's a much more serious Zeus in that show. But he's also dealing with his kids doing bad things. And what is the thing that is bad about the lightning bolt? So the lightning bolt was supposed to cause, if I remember correctly, Zeus and Poseidon to go to war.
Right.
Right? And by doing that, then that would awaken their parents, the Titans.
Well,
right?
And also just cause it like destruction to the earth. But yes.
But that is sort of what Ragnarok is that if I remember from that series, like there's this whole cycle that happens where the parents get awoken, they destroy everything, it starts over, and then their kids take over, and then it just like it goes in a circle. So I think that might be what's happening here. Chaos may reign, chaos may be the Titans being woken up again.
It seems like that's always the way you have to go with God's shows, because even like something like Exploding Cans was supposed to be the devil versus God in cat form. It's like there always has to be the threat of war that as an undercurrent.
Yeah, but it's always like Ares that causes one of the biggest things. So I'm waiting for Ares to show up. Poseidon's already been mentioned. We didn't see him, but he's the one who's supposed to be on Earth making sure the humans follow what they're supposed to. And clearly this thing with the mural that didn't go well, he's gonna get a talking to by Zeus for that. And then lastly, the plot is most similar, I would say, to the show The Fall of the House of Usher. Because
really?
like in Mike Flanagan's show, you have this powerful pharma exec, and he's running the world, and his family runs the world, and they're slowly exposed, and everything he's worked for falls into chaos. That's what's happening here. Zeus is going to be exposed. The prophecy is going to come true. His family and the gods are probably going to start dying. Earth is going to burn up or something like that. And that plot is also echoed, I would say, in Foundation. In just a few seasons of that, it's always about how the empire is afraid of its own destruction. Like I said, with Ragnarok, similar premise. And then, I do have a couple of extra special points to point out. Yeah. So the pro-wise, this goes against conventions in several ways. First of all, by telling us at the beginning that Riddy is going to leave her boyfriend, I set my expectation kind of low at being impressed. And then having her killed off 75% of the way through, that was a real surprise. And then also not having the typical relationship where he's not a cheater, he's not an asshole, he's a nice guy, and his only real flaw is that he loves her too much. But then you also don't villainize her because you understand where she's coming from. I like that they were able to play that line really well. Negative is that it's not a very serious show, so it's never going to be able to capture the emotional arc of, say, like the House of the Dragon or something like that.
But again, it's almost a show that isn't trying to do that, it feels like.
Yeah, I would say credit to Orpheus and Riddy, though, for keeping it grounded. Like, if it had just been Jeff Goldblum, that was what my expectation was, and I was going to think that I wouldn't like it as much. And I do see the foiled theme here of, like, Dionysus has daddy issues, and Riddy has mommy issues, and they're both sort of set on a course to meet each other at some point.
But aren't they the ones with the prophecy? Because the prophecy is what even Charlie Covell...
Orpheus isn't part of the prophecy.
Not at all? So
No. The prophecy is it's just been one prophecy so far, and it's just Riddy and Zeus having the same one. Basically, his family's going to fall, chaos is going to reign, and I think Riddy's going to bring it about. You do remind me, though, that I did say that there was one Greek mythological, like, there's that famous tale about the lover who follows his wife to hell, makes a deal with Hades, and then it's the promises as long as he comes out and he doesn't look back, he's going to be able to bring her back. I'm curious if that's going to happen here, but then that would kind of cut off what Riddy's able to do, so I don't know if it's going to do that one.
I know we've already compared it to this, but this does feel just like an adult version of Percy Jackson. I have 3 article titles here.
Okay.
These are all real, but I want to see which one you agree with the most.
All right.
And they're kind of reviews for them. So the first one was Jeff Goldblum's furiously fun Greek god drama is a masterpiece. That was from The Guardian.
Masterpiece? Too early to tell. Well, it was in one episode. I'm going to give it a 7.5 out of 10, and I'm definitely going to tune into the next episode just to check it out. It does enough, and also there's like not just the creativity, but the song that they made for the show, which Orpheus sang, I think, like I said, elevated it. So,
well, you saying a 7.5 makes these other 2 because they were a little bit more negative kind of feel mood. But yeah, the series is going to be 8 episodes. They shot in Spain Spain, and Italy. Like I said, that was from The Guardian. They gave the series a 5 out of 5. But it seems like wherever you go, you're going to get a different like rating, or you're going to get different pros, because it's like some people really like Jeff Goldblum's performance. They say that he's the best thing about the show. There's other articles that say he's the worst thing about the show. Yeah,
that's just Jeff Goldblum. That is what his character. I saw the same thing for Ragnarok. Well, you know, when that came out, it was like he's the best part of Ragnarok, or he's too much in Ragnarok.
The strange thing is that this has a 69% critic score, audience score 75%. He's one of the very few actors, Screen Rant talked about this, he's one of the very few actors that every single one of his TV shows that have a Rotten Tomatoes score always have not only a tomato, but also the audience score is a turned upside popcorn bucket, meaning that he's never had a rotten
even his
TV
own
score.
Documentary series, because I know he came out with something like The World According to Jeff Goldblum. That was his thing. That you're saying that was well received.
If it has a Rotten Tomatoes score, it's a tomato.
All right.
And but this has a 7.1 on IMDb. It seems like people are kind of trying to guess, because you have IGN that gave it 6 out of 10.
You have to watch it to make your own opinion about it. I will give a few more like pros and cons for it, because I do have a few more. Billie Piper right now, I don't think she's been talked about enough because she's only in 2 parts, but she's a wild card. She could she may be a cat. That's my hidden thesis, is that because we do meet Dennis the cat, which is Riddy's cat, and also Orpheus's cat. And if they're both on missions, I'm wondering who's going to feed that cat. But at the beginning, Billie Piper's character is stealing cat food, and then she eats it in front of Riddy. And so it does make me think that she's either very, very strange, or maybe she has a connection to that, because Egyptian gods were known to be very favorable to cats. I loved the fake Earth Olympus details and the references they were bringing in, calling the heretics Trojan 7. Like there's probably 7 of them out there. I liked it when the Hera's tongue wall, that was really cool. Dionysus' mom being mentioned as a bee, and then even the brandings with the cereal, and I'm pretty sure I missed a bunch of other stuff. The narrator, though, I'm not sure if I'm sold on that. This is the 3rd series in a row, like you mentioned, with City of God, but also with Bad Monkey. Bad Monkey also had a snarky narrator, and I gave it credit for that. But this is the 3rd series we get a narrator, and at this point, the snark is getting a little old.
Well, in City of God's not really snarky, though.
I said having a narrator just in general, telling you about every character, and it's becoming formulaic to me. I did like the Ari introduction because we didn't get to see her again. And then a negative, I would say, is that why do all rich kids who come from either, in this case, a god, but also just rich people, Chuck from Gossip Girl, Perry from House of Usher, Adam from You, Lucifer and Lucifer, they all do the same thing. They all open their own nightclubs. They all try to impress their dads by opening nightclubs, and I don't get it. Like, what is the draw? And I'm obviously talking about Diadeses in this, or whatever his name is. And so my last thing will be that the main flaw in Mrs. Davis is that there's this ambitiousness that goes with a creative series that doesn't have source material. You can get a little too carried away with it, and then it leads to a resolution that doesn't feel as well thought out, and you end up settling with the simple stuff. And this could go that very same direction. I could definitely see that.
Also, with the homeless woman thing, it reminds me a little bit of Sons of Anarchy. Why are they always the people that kind of can tell the most, or can tell what are going to happen in the future?
Because they're the most affected by it. Like, if we actually knew 100% that the world was going to end, but no one was going to take us seriously, I'm pretty sure you would also drive yourself a little bit mad. I mean, that goes without saying.
The last thing I'll say is that there were 5 episodes. The first one that you watched, directed by Georgie Banks Davies. She worked on Paper Girls, which was the first 2 episodes, so you saw the first one out of that. And also, they're going to be directing... Did you know The Night Manager is coming out with season 2?
Yeah, I did, but the Paper Girls connection, there's so many clouds in this series. And there was like giant pink clouds and paper.
I saw him controlling at one point Zeus. Yeah.
Wasn't there a Netflix show about the family of gods that lived on Earth?
The Almighty Johnsons or something, right? Yeah.
There's no shortage of God flavored TV out there if you want to go find it. This is probably on the upper end of it. That's where we'll leave it. Thanks for listening. We'll see you on the next episode. Hope you enjoyed this one. Bye.
Bye.